Hello and welcome back to Undoing We. I'm Mardi Winder, your host and strategic divorce consultant, helping people deal with high conflict, complex, and high asset divorce cases because those tend to be more complex. I want to welcome you to the new streaming network, Going Solo Media, WGSN-DB radio platform. And it is my pleasure today to revisit a talk that I had with an amazing individual by the name of Maria Natapov. Maria is a step parenting coach, helping people to not only parent, she also does parenting coaching, but her and co-parenting work, but her goal is specifically to help blended families, at least in our interview. I'm also going to share with you in our next session, next Thursday, a really exciting new program called BH2O, which is also a program for parents who are dealing with high conflict co-parenting situations to go through a specific training with coaches. Maria is one of those coaches to really revolutionize and fix challenges with co-parenting, even when you're co-parenting with somebody really difficult. So if you're interested in that, don't forget to tune in again next Thursday. But for this interview, I want to talk with Maria one-on-one all about blended families. So I'm going to let you watch the clip, and then we're going to touch base on the other side and just review some of the key factors that Maria mentioned. Blending families is a big factor in parental conflict post-divorce, especially because blended families, it's not just you and the other partner, it's you and the other partner and their ex and your ex and grandparents and everybody else that all gets involved, right?
Exactly. And I love that you underscored that because that's exactly it. It's all the players.
Yeah. So let's talk before we jump into this topic, because like I say, I think this is really cool that I've never had an opportunity to speak with somebody on this, but let's talk a little bit about you. So what got you into this and why is this now your area of focus, Maria?
Yeah, thanks for asking. So I am a child of divorce, and my parents did not have a smooth divorce and separation, and it was tumultuous and it was ongoing over the course of many years. And then later on, when I was in high school and college, they both remarried, and I was thrown into a step family situation, and it was really difficult. And also I'm going to be dating myself here, but this was a while ago, and I think our also understanding back then of all of that was very different. But on top of it, I'm an immigrant. So my family is already coming from a culture that approaches this stuff very differently. We don't talk about feelings. And there was a lot that I was needing as far as support that just wasn't available. And I think my parents just had no idea of how to begin to support me in that way, which is why I'm so passionate about this work and about supporting families, not only divorce. I'm also a divorcee, and divorce is devastating. From my first marriage, divorce is absolutely devastating, and it's a bear, and it's devastating financially, it's devastating from a logistical perspective and emotionally. And on top of that, if there's children involved, which in my situation there were not, but if there's children involved, it's that much more devastating because now there's the responsibility of supporting them and helping them to adjust and figuring out all the logistical components for them and how to split up parenting time. It's very difficult. And so that's exactly why I'm passionate about this work. I came into it, I was a step parent because when I met my now husband, he had a daughter, and against my advice to find a more stable role model, he was like, no, because you know what you didn't like when you experienced things when you were in that situation, you are better equipped than you give yourself credit for, which took a little while, but I embraced that. And 5 years into my step parenting role, my stepdaughter revealed she was being abused and neglected by her bio mom and stepdad and came to live with us full time. And I was holding space for the fact that, I'm in a mom role, but not a mom, and helping her navigate through the healing journey. And then last year, I actually ended up adopting my stepdaughter, and she had a lot of say in that. But my heart, I always hold space for, I hope she finds a way to have a relationship with her bio mom, because I know on an energetic level, on an emotional level, on a physical level, it has an impact. We are physiologically wired for those connections. We want those connections. We want it to go well. We want affirmation and positive interactions and, the love. And so I hope that she's able to have that with her bio mom someday in a way where she can stand solidly on her own and feel whole and complete and also have access to that. And that is really, my wish for all families, to the degree that it's available to them. Obviously, I honor the goals of the people that I work with, and that's not necessarily everybody's goal. But I've learned through my personal journey, which has been extensive, as you can maybe imagine, through all of these iterations, that as we're able to take a step back and look at how do we want to look back on this chapter in our lives, whatever the chapter is, whether we're at the beginning or contemplating the divorce, or whether we're in the thick of it, or whether we're beyond it and are finding a way to navigate co-parenting and supporting our kids through this. What do we want that to look like, and how do we want to feel about it? Right. And ultimately it comes down to hopefully having no regrets, right? Yeah. Which usually means doing a very difficult thing that almost feels inaccessible in the moment. Right. But I'm here to tell you, if you move boldly towards that, it is available, it is possible. And the growth that I have found and the fulfillment and the expansion that I couldn't even wrap my mind around, or would have never thought was available to me, has been outstanding and incredible. And it's been so liberating. And it's really a gift. I think when you're able to forgive and move beyond some of the immediate circumstances and some of the immediate emotions that come up, it is a gift that you give not only to your children and to your ex, but to yourself.
Yes. Yeah. Because it's that, nobody wants to live in a house of chaos. I mean, nobody does. Adults don't want to, kids, your pets don't want to live in a house full of chaos. And exactly. So what can you do? This is where I always feel frustrated is I get that you can be mad at your ex, but when that is starting to affect your children's ability to feel comfortable and loved and cared for, then you're not hurting your ex anymore. You're destroying your children. And I know this, a lot of people get upset when I say this, but you're choosing to do it. And, we're not blind to the fact that this is happening. And so, yeah. Can you talk a little bit, because I know that, there's a difference between what some step parents do, which is just don't do anything with the kids. Or then there's the step parent that becomes like the helicopter parent that thinks that they're better than either one of the bio parents. What would good step parent support look like? And I realize it's going to look different based on the ages of the children, but can you give some kind of general characteristics?
Yeah, I think the first thing I'd like to just touch on briefly before I answer that question is some of what you mentioned, which is I think that sometimes it's so overwhelming to know what your role is and what's available that there's so much fear that you're just like, I don't want to overstep. I'm just going to do nothing. And there's a little bit of shell shock attached to it. And then I think at other times there's this powerful responsibility of like, okay, I'm going to step into the step parenting shoes. I'm going to be a parent. I'm going to do all the things because again, it's unclear what exactly that role is and what is a part of it and what isn't a part of it. Because we're never really, we don't have a clear concept of what is parenting versus step parenting. We're just told this is what good caregiving looks like, right? And so we just want to do all the things and fully support the stepchildren and our partner and just take on the responsibility to whatever degree available, right? Is kind of how we think of it. But the reality is nobody's asking us to do that. And oftentimes it's not available to us because there's already two biological parents and that is their responsibility. And so my advice in the beginning for people is always just go easy and slowly and use all your senses to observe because you're walking into a completely unique and different situation. It's a culture unto itself. There are individuals with specific personalities, needs, and they have a dynamic that's already established, and you're brand new and you don't know these things because every single situation is unique and different.
Right.
So instead of feeling like you need to take on a lot of responsibility, give yourself the time and space to just dip your toe in and walk in slowly and gently and just be observant. What do you notice? And as you observe more, especially intentionally, more will come to light. You will start to notice the patterns. You'll start to notice what's there. And then possibly things will open up as far as what's available, like where you can, join in or provide support, or at least be a part of what is there, to whatever degree available. But I definitely strongly suggest discuss it with your partner. Make sure that you guys are on the same page. Kids need that. They need a united front among their caregivers. So whatever inconsistencies there are, privately, get on the same page, have those conversations, hash that stuff out, and ultimately follow their lead because they are the biological parent. But, it is possible to explore, and I call it planting seeds, new concepts, new perspectives. You do have value to offer because you are an outsider. And sometimes parents, they have a different view of their child because they know them since birth. Right. And sometimes whatever their impressions are not necessarily exactly what is at this particular stage as their kids are evolving. So you might be able to offer valuable insights on that front, but go gently because it is very personal. The stakes are enormously high. And for them to be open to your suggestions and what you're bringing to the table, you need to go slowly. And remember, likely these conversations can't happen all at once.
Yeah, what great advice. I love that. The other thing that I think is a big one is if the kids are older, they can help create that role as a step parent. Yes. And including the children at an age appropriate level, to have a nice, maybe take the kids for a walk and say, what can I do to help you? And maybe Absolutely. They're going to say, well, I'd like some help with my homework. That's a whole different thing than you just coming in out of the blue and I'm going to help you with your homework. If that's something that either the kids are going to react to step parents differently too, I think.
Totally. Yes.
I think really, I love that idea of just observing how the children are reacting and really using them as the guide and talking privately with your partner. Yeah.
Yes. And Wonderful. The other piece is connection over consequences all day long, because again, they have their parents. They're the ones to implement consequences or discipline or what have you. But for your role, it's really about the connection because you are brand new. They're still getting used to you. And a lot of times parents are really ready to move on and kids are not, because right. many, many times they're still hoping for reunification between their parents and they're thinking this is just a temporary situation. And again, you're a reminder for them that you're here, their other parent isn't. That's right. really painful. That's a lot to adjust to and a lot to swallow. And kids today also are inundated, I think, with a lot more. They're just confronted with a lot more as far as how to navigate day-to-day life than we used to have to be confronted with. And so I think it's a lot. So just having that understanding, remembering that in the back of your mind. And a lot of times what you're seeing as far as behavior is communication.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. And what about this is always, I used to teach the co-parenting program, the court-ordered one, the 4-hour mandatory. And one of the things that always would come up as a question is, well, my ex has got a new girlfriend or a new boyfriend, and they are insisting that the kids call the new partner mom or dad. Can you talk a little bit about why that is probably the worst idea that anybody has ever had, and why parents think this is a good thing? I just don't get it. But
it may be, I don't know if perhaps the parents are just hoping to kind of normalize the situation, but you don't want to do that because kids get to decide, they get to choose. And also that person is never going to be mom or dad. And I have no delusions. My daughter calls me mom. Again, I adopted her. She had a lot of say in that. I have no delusions. I'm not mom. legally, like schmegally, whatever, but I'm not.
Right. Right.
That's just the reality, you know? So, um, it's just going to be different. It doesn't mean it can't be beautiful and unique and wonderful in its own way. It is. And there's that opportunity. And so don't, you know, my advice around that is just embrace that for what it can be without trying to make it something it's not and fit it into a particular preconceived mold,
Right.
because it's not going to work. And what you're really doing there is stifling your child's voice. And what many may not realize too is it creates a rift where now they're like, oh, I can't talk to mom or dad about this.
Right.
It doesn't feel safe. I
Right.
can't express myself. I can't be authentic. I can't, you know, and
Right.
like that it's not okay to talk about these things. And sometimes it goes even beyond that. Messaging travels to the rest of their lives too. Like, oh, now I can't be vulnerable in these ways because it's not okay and it's not acceptable and people won't understand.
Right. And I think I love your message of listening to the child. So if the child slips up and calls you mom, that's
Yeah.
because they or dad, that's because
Yeah.
you're filling an important role in their life and they shouldn't be punished for that. And if they do want to call you mom or dad, you know, maybe you can sit down as a complete family, you know, step
Yeah.
parents, maybe everybody could sit down and talk about this so that nobody gets upset about it and
Yeah.
people understand where this is coming from. I have to laugh. I taught grade 1 and 2 for many, many years. And I remember one little boy, and this was in the 90s. So this was a long time ago too. And things were different. I remember this little boy came in and he had obviously his step mom with him, but he had no idea how to introduce her. He goes, this is no, she's not my mom. No, she's not. And he went through a bunch of things she was. And then finally he goes, this is a woman that lives in my house. I mean, I didn't want to laugh, but it was so funny because, I mean, he was struggling and everybody had, you know, responded completely appropriately. He felt very comfortable. But, you know, to put a kid in a position where they don't know how to introduce an adult is awkward. It shouldn't be happening. So, yeah.
And my stepdaughter and I look for a lot alike. So when she was with us, if she were to see a teacher, you know, when we were out and about or something, and they would assume, oh, is this mom? And she felt really awkward because she didn't know what to say. And then she was like, well, do I tell them everything or do I not say anything?
Right.
It was a lot of mixed emotions. It's complicated.
Yeah.
So,
and I think that might be a conversation, again, age appropriate, to sit down and say, you know, when we are out, what do you want? How do you want to introduce this person in your life? Because it's even funny. I've you know, again, done parent teacher conferences with blended family things where the parents don't know how to introduce the new partners and who they are and how everybody's connected. And it really doesn't matter. That's the thing. There's, you know, but so let's talk a little bit, because I think that a lot of this is really based on what the family is comfortable with, what the kids are comfortable with, and how the kids are responding. Let's talk about the other side of this coin. So let's talk about the dating when you have kids post-divorce. Can you, because I think this is sometimes where people make big mistakes. They cause their kids a lot of trauma. I know that's a real thing, you know, for kids, cause the kids discomfort, trauma, stress, and a lot of confusion about what's going on.
100%. So my best advice around that is, if you're a divorced parent and you're thinking about dating, talk to your kids and say, hey, I think I might be ready to date. How do you feel about that? What comes up for you? Give them the space. Number one, it's preparing them for the inevitable future. You're letting them know transparently where you're at and what they can expect. And then on top of it, it gives you an opportunity to find out where they are at. What are their fears? What are their concerns? How are they feeling, so that you can support them? I can't stress enough. A lot of times parents think that, okay, my child is going through a lot. I'm ill-equipped to handle this. I need professionals. And yes, professionals are phenomenal and they have a wonderful, powerful, useful role. However, there's no substitute to being the parent that helps and supports their children to transition through all of this. You know them best, and you've been their number one source of support, and you've been there all along. They have a rapport and trust with you, and they've been relying on you for nurture, for security. There's no substitute for that. No one is going to come in magically having all the answers more than you. It's really they would be there as an additional support or somebody to work with you to support your kids if that is necessary. But you have to have a significant role in this, and that's the job. That is
Right.
what they need, and that is what's going to help them successfully navigate it and come out on the other side and be resilient and be able to move through this difficult time. But there's absolutely, like, my best advice is just be transparent, create space for them to share with you honestly what's going on for them,
Yeah.
and then help them to the best of your ability to process what that looks like. And, kids have a difficult time often distinguishing the complexities, the layers. And that's where the parent can really play an integral role in identifying those, right? Because I think, I don't remember what it was we were talking about earlier in this conversation, but you said something. And I was thinking the same thing, right? Like, distinguishing that already is such a powerful step, because once you identify the thing that you didn't know, now you recognize there is choice.
Yeah.
But maybe you didn't notice there was choice before. And the same thing for kids as they are dealing with very complex situations that are causing all sorts of emotions to come up. Maybe fear, maybe anxiety, maybe they're just upset, maybe, all sorts of things, but they're not necessarily able to distinguish all of that for themselves. So that's where you can come in. You can name it. You can let them sit with it a little bit, like circle back and continue the conversation. And it's interesting because it's a little bit tricky. It requires some vulnerability from the parent in order to invite that. Because if you just say, "Oh, you can share anything with me," a lot of times,
Yeah.
it kind of falls on deaf ears, because it's like, okay,
What do you mean? Really?
yeah, what do you mean? Right. Am I not going to get in trouble? That hasn't been how it's been. What about that time? Right. So they're not necessarily going to take it at face value. But at the same time, you want to make sure to maintain healthy boundaries with your child, especially age appropriate ones. So it's tricky because, yes, there's a certain level of vulnerability that's required. And at the same time, you want to make sure that you leave the adult things for adults in your life, be it friends, family, support groups, coaches, therapists, whoever it is that you're working with.
Right.
And so that's, really what that would look like.
So as you can see, Maria is a wealth of information, and she is incredibly open about sharing her personal journey and some of the things that she noticed really made a difference in her situation. But the nice thing is she also gives a lot of strategies, tips, and effective techniques that are based on extensive research into blended families and the co-parenting phase of any post-divorce relationship. So let's look at a few of the key ones. So I've picked out 3 that I think are really important. And as somebody who taught the court-ordered co-parenting classes for many, many years, all throughout Northeast Texas area, and I also did some of the trainings up in Canada, these are the ones that we highlight in those classes as well. So number 1, it's really important to go slowly as the new person coming in to the children's life. Now, that starts right with the dating situation. So we want to make sure that we're not overwhelming our kids by bringing a new partner in too much, too often, and too overwhelming for the children. Because despite the fact that you may love your new partner and you may really feel that this is the person for you, your kids need to warm up to them. Your kids need to get that opportunity to build that relationship that you have already done. And the thing that I like that Maria talks about is prioritizing connection. So as the new person coming into the children's life, you really need to listen to the kids. And as the parent of the children, you also need to be very attuned to how they are, what's their level of comfort, what's their level of acceptance, and are they really in a state where they are able to welcome a co-parent a step parent into their life. They may just be struggling with the whole co-parenting issue and getting used to going back and forth between 2 homes. So it's always based on the kids' needs. which ties in nicely to the second one. And I think Maria says this beautifully: let kids lead the relationship. Depending on their age, they should be allowed to make decisions about how much time they want to spend with the new partner or the step parent by themselves, what they want to call them. I am really against step parents taking the parental name if kids already have those people in their lives. So things like mom and dad for step parents can confuse younger kids. It often offends older children, and it can boost conflict within your co-parenting relationship. So, lots of step parents. I was a step parent, and I can say, like, Marty was good. That's what my stepson called me. He was older. But you certainly can do things like, there can be other names. I've had people that have had really kind of silly names. We have a bunch of names for grandparents, right? Nini, Nana, Papa, Mama. I mean, there's all these kind of names. So you can create your own step parenting name. I had one one child, actually not a client, but a child in my classroom who always referred to Gigi. And I said, "Who is Gigi?" "Oh, that's my other mom." And so, you can definitely come up with interesting names. And sometimes maybe the kids may be really comfortable with developing that name or understanding. But again, a lot of times, especially with older kids, kids over even 6, 7, 8, it's pretty much first name basis for a lot of step parents. And if you're comfortable with that, that's great. And the last thing is make sure that as parents and step parents, that you are modeling healthy boundaries and involving the kids in the communication. So that means for parents, when you are into the dating area and you have met somebody and you think your kids are in a good space to be introduced to a new person, that you are open and age appropriate in discussing the ideas of dating, new relationships, and what the family structure is going to look like, and being transparent with kids if you are dating without involving them in the dates. And I am really confident that not involving your kids in casual dating is the best step you can take. Unfortunately, if you're not sure if that's a good person for you, they may be a fun person to be around. Maybe you enjoy doing, going to a movie, going to dinner. Involving your kids in those kind of relationships is only going to set them up for a repeated pattern of somebody in their life, somebody out of their life, somebody in their life, somebody out of their life. So be really careful with that and focus on your kids throughout this. If you're in a new relationship, take the time, make the effort to really make the step parent feel comfortable, but more importantly, make the children feel comfortable with the step parent and the new relationship. I hope this was helpful. I hope you got some tips, strategies, ideas, and insights. And after listening to this, go do something nice for yourself, because you